Hello and welcome back to the Forza 92 podcast. I'm your host, Jack, once again joined by Luke. How are you, mate?
I'm very good, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, like struggling in this heat. Leicester's more like the Mediterranean this week.
It's all changed from last week.
Oh, honestly, we were moaning about having to put the heating on last week. It was ridiculous. And now, we're talking about ridiculous temperatures. It was nearly 30 degrees here. Supposed to be this week. It's like 29 degrees today. It's unbelievable. And I'm back at work. Why couldn't it have been like this in the summer a few weeks ago? But Gurj, however, is a very lucky man because you're off on holiday tomorrow, aren't you? How are you, mate?
Yeah, I'm good, man. I'm good. Off to some blistering 30-odd degree heat in Rome. So there'll be plenty of walking and plenty of sweating.
I imagine so.
Sweating my bollocks off, as Steve Cooper would say.
Yeah, to be fair, I'm sweating my little boobies off today, mate. It's ridiculous. Especially working in a school as well. Like we have to wear like professional dress, and I'm not joking. Like having a shirt tucked in, tied, like buttons to the top with a tie on is not what you want in this temperature. Winter, love it. Like this time of year, not a chance. Yeah, we've actually got a little bit of a what's the way I'm going to describe this? A little bit of maybe a sort of slap together episode today because we've got obviously Ewan's not here currently, but maybe joining us later. We're not sure yet. Luke's going to have to hop off later on because he's going to obviously have to go record his own show, Corridor of Uncertainty podcast. Please make sure you check it out. It's brilliant stuff. We're very, very lucky to have Luke with us. He's got his own show that is amazing. So check it out, please. But today, Luke, what are we going to be doing?
We are firstly going to be taking on another tier list, the Premier League tier list. And the transfer window is over. So now, well, barring any Saudi Arabia like last minute buys, Mohamed Salah might be off. I mean, we don't know, but barring any of that, the squads are together, and we can predict the Premier League with no excuses anymore. There's no excuses for any horrific predictions. We've got a little bit of a taster, so we are going to dive straight into this Premier League prediction, and this is final now. This is set. So. Yeah, that's what we're going to be diving into. I think we've got 5 tiers, right? We've got the champions, the top 4, and then relegation. I can't remember what the other 2 are. But on Spotify, obviously,
we've actually got 7. Sorry to
7
tiers. Because for some reason it's gone Champions League, Europa Conference.
Oh right, yeah.
High mid-table, lower mid-table, relegation is what it's gone.
Got you. Okay. Yeah. And if anyone is listening on Spotify, we will make it very clear, so don't worry if you can't see the tier list. It will not be a problem. So yeah, are we going alphabetical order?
We'll do it in the order of the teams that are on here. So yeah, that would be in alphabetical order. I will start sharing the screen now. Gurj, this is your sort of first predictions episode that you've done with us. Are you feeling apprehensive about this? Are you feeling excited? Or are you worried that you're going to say something that will go on the internet and people will tear you apart for it forever?
All 3, mate, if I'm honest. We'll go for it. I'm about to probably upset a lot of people, but that's the point, I guess, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I've not had that much of a backlash from Preston fans, in terms of what I've done. I've been, and not even on purpose. I like Preston, but I've been really mean to Preston. And then I messaged Luke on deadline day because obviously I was saying that they were really trying to pursue Tom Cannon, and then we signed him. I was like, oh, I think they're going to hate any Preston fans that listen. They're going to hate me even more now. So, yeah, you always upset somebody. I listen to other podcasts and they talk about Leicester, and I'm sure you listen to them about United and QPR, and people say things and you're like, that is bollocks. You cannot say that with absolute certainty when you've not watched us regularly. So we're going to try and do that, and I'm sure we will talk a lot of bollocks, which is a shame because that's not our name anymore. But let's see where we start. So we're going to start off with Arsenal. Because we're going to do it in alphabetical order because why not? We'll start off with Arsenal. I think, and I'll stick my colours to the mast, I think Arsenal have got a good chance of winning the league this year. And I'm not just saying that because I don't want City to win 4 in a row. I actually think that out of the 2 of them, Arsenal have strengthened, whereas City haven't as well, I don't think. And it wasn't until the business end of the season that they really... Because City didn't steamroll it like they would normally. So I don't know if you guys are in agreement with me, or we just think City are too good. Like, Luke, I'll start with you. What's your kind of feeling towards them in that regard?
I mean, I can't see. It's hard to see anybody stopping City. To be honest, at some point it has to happen. So, and if it is anyone, I do agree that it's probably going to be Arsenal this season. The business on paper is perfect, but we've seen already that they're not quite finished yet. Whether they just need a bit more time. Like Havertz doesn't seem like I don't think we've ever known what Havertz's best role is, but I don't think Arteta's quite found what he's used for. We've obviously seen Partey at right back and now injured, and it's just been a little bit. It's not been smooth sailing for Arsenal, although the points are on the board. Obviously dropped a couple, but got a big result this weekend, which I'm sure we'll talk about later. It hasn't been perfect, but if you're winning while it's not perfect, then obviously it can get better. But to answer the question, I think second is probably where they're at, and I just can't see City falling, just dropping that many points. That I can see Arsenal dropping more points along the season, whether that's draws. The top half is quite strong. It's quite easy to drop points to the Newcastles, the Brightons, the Villas, where I think Man City will edge those results. Arsenal might drop points in those games.
Yeah. Gurj, are you in agreement? Because you kind of have the deciding vote here, unless you are going to be like, oh, United will win it. I think you have the deciding vote here for top of the league.
Pains me to say, I think City will probably win again. And it's not taking away what they've done. It's not taking away what Arsenal have done, sorry. Like, they're recruited really well. They play good football. You can see what Arteta's trying to do and, what he's trying to implement. I just think Europe will play a factor this year. Obviously, they've not been in it for so long, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think they got knocked out quite early in the cup competitions last year as well.
Yeah, they lost to Sporting in the Europa League. I think it was in the 16 or the round of 30, 32 or the round of 16, and then they didn't go deep in the cups.
Yeah, so that's another thing, because Arteta almost has a decision. It's, does he go gung ho and try and win the lot, as in all four, or does he try and prioritize the league, which is what I think he tried to do last year, and unfortunately didn't work out for them. I think second, but I think it'll be a bit closer than probably last year. I think it might come down to the last one or two games again. So, but I just think City, back off a treble win. Obviously Pep's so experienced with like Europe and managing competitions, and well, we all know as FPL players, Pep roulette. So you never know who he's going to play, and I think they'll finish top two definitely, but I think second.
Yeah. So we've got City in that top spot there, in that top tier as champions. So they're in the champions tier, not in the championship. Wow, that'd be a shot, wouldn't it? And then Arsenal, one of the other teams in the top four. What I want to do now is, rather than breaking down every single team we might think in the top four, I reckon we just say the other two teams that we think will come in the top four. And if we agree on all of them, we'll put them in. If there's any disagreement, we'll sort of have a debate. I will start with Gurj. I'll start with you this time. Who do you think? Just say them, and like I say, if we're in agreement, we go straight in. Might have a quick chat. If there's disagreement, we'll have that there. We'll have it out. Okay. So Gurj, who are your next two?
I'm gonna go United, and I'm gonna go probably. I'll go probably Liverpool. I think that'd be my top four. Okay,
Luke.
I will go for Liverpool as well, and maybe a little bit of recency bias, but I'll put Spurs in there too.
This is interesting, because I was going to go, and Gurj, you're not going to be happy with me, and I'm sorry. I was actually going to go Liverpool and Spurs, and the only reason for that is because, again, a little bit of recency bias, but I'm really enjoying the way Spurs are playing at the moment. But also, like, they've got no Europe. I don't think they'll maybe pursue cup competitions that well. I think Levy's priority probably would be getting in the top four. So I think Liverpool are good. United, for me, they don't look good at the moment. They played their best that they played all season on Sunday, but they still don't look good, Gurj. I mean, we're going to dive into the game in a bit more detail later on, so let's not chew the fat on it too much. But They don't look great, and we were talking about all the games they've played so far.
Yeah, it's a weird. Do you know what? Like, it's not easy being a United fan at the moment. I can't even lie. Like, I've said multiple occasions over the past 2 weeks, one normal day is all I ask for. You know, without there's no controversy, no issues, no players beefing managers, anything like that. But like you said, Sunday was our best performance by far. Like, there was a game plan, and you could see it kind of working. And like, as annoying as it is, I literally did think, you know, if we had Amrabat, I think we would have been a lot better. I'm not saying one player will change the whole dynamic of a season, but I just think, I think, well, we had a rubbish start last year, and look how it ended up. You know, finished third, won a cup, got to the cup final in the FA Cup. We won't talk about Seville, but you know, we did a half decent run in the Europa League as well. So, you know, I think we'll edge top four. Spurs would be the one we'd be challenging. I think Liverpool have strengthened enough to comfortably be in there.
Yeah. Luke, you said Spurs as well. So we're going to have to try and put forward an argument to Gurj to allow him to concede. Why do you think that Spurs will get top four? I mean, I kind of briefly touched on it. I just think that that'll be their priority. They haven't got European football. It was kind of a straight sweep, same as Chelsea to an extent, but I just don't think they're anywhere near the same level. What do you think puts them in that bracket?
Yeah, no, that obviously having no Euro and already out the Carabao Cup as well, so it's like they are getting rid of the competitions quickly. But I just think they seem to have no pressure on them. It's just a kind of a free hit of a season, and it's quite clear that they're playing with freedom. Maybe when it gets down the line later on in the season, when people are like, hang on a minute, these boys are up there, then the pressure might jump on. But even just like in the stands as well, it seems like the fans are fully behind Postecoglou. It's just such a breath of fresh air. It just seems like a completely new club, essentially. And I just think that they're just thriving on the positivity from the manager and downwards. And everybody's just, the Kane saga's kind of gone, and everyone's got a bit more of a role. We're seeing Son on fire all of a sudden after having a pretty poor season for his standards last year. It seems like it's just a breath of fresh air in the club, and it's only positive. And like Gurj said about Man United, there is not one normal week, but Spurs are having just a whale of a time, and nothing can go wrong at the moment.
Yeah, I'd agree. So, Gurj, are you? I mean, democracy rules, but are you happy to just concede on this and be proven right at the end of the year?
I'll go with the democracy because I won't concede, but I'll go with the majority vote. I'll be a bit diplomatic, I guess.
It's okay. It's okay. Because based on that conversation, that means that United automatically go into Europa League 5th and 6th. So
yeah, like I said, I think it'll be between us and Spurs for top four. If they edge us out, then fair enough. But if we edge them out, then I will come back and revisit this.
To be fair though, based on the new coefficient ruling coming in, that might actually be enough for Champions League anyway. So
yeah, so might be all right.
So actually, everybody wins. But so this is the kind of the big one, isn't it? Because we've got all those teams there. Now you've got the conversation of Newcastle, Villa, Chelsea. Like, you've got to see some big teams, and probably some other teams that will surprise as well. Like Brighton might have another surprising season. West Ham look like they've started the season really well as well. Like, there's quite a few teams like that could be sniffing around those 6th and 7th spots. I'll start with my team, who I think finished 6th personally, and I still kind of back Newcastle to an extent, and I'm sure Ewan will be happy, and it's not biased, I promise. I just think that they're still riding the crest of the wave. They've lost 2 games, one against Liverpool, one against Man City, losing to Brighton. Anyone can go to the Amex and get beat if they have a bad day. I think they have to bounce back in their next game and win. I think if they fail to win their next game, it's a big, that then it suddenly becomes 4 defeats in a row. It's probably their worst run of form since Howe took over. It becomes a problem. But I'd probably back Newcastle for 6th, and I'm sure both of you will disagree with me, but I could be wrong. Luke?
Yeah, I mean, this is really, really tight. like you say, the game after the international break for Newcastle's huge in that kind of run because they need to get on some form. Brighton just look unreal, but them in Europe, it seems I don't know. I don't think Brighton have that thin a squad, so I don't think it's that much of a problem for Brighton. Like their forward options are unbelievable. Like Ferguson has only had one. I think he's taken a knock now. Now I say they've got a good depth, but like I think he's only had the one start. So they've got options. So I think again it might be a little bit of recency bias, but I'm gonna go for Brighton.
Okay, Gurj again, deciding vote or somebody different.
For me, it's between three. For me, it's between Brighton, Newcastle, and West Ham. I think, and
you don't think Chelsea are close at all?
No, I don't. I think that they're not cohesive enough, Chelsea, at the moment. Don't get me wrong, if you look at their team on paper, it's unbelievable. But as we've seen, like you play against a team that's solidified and, playing together like Forest, and then you've got, and they got beat. And sometimes it's not about the individual, it's about the team as a cohesive unit. So that'll probably upset some Chelsea fans, and that's fair enough. But yeah, like I said, I think West Ham have invested so well, and like I've had this conversation a few times, that Declan Rice money has gone to some very good players, and not necessarily.
I think they're a stronger team now. I think yes, they've lost their best player, that's a fact, but I do think they're a stronger team now.
Oh, 100%. They've, just got Kudos. They've got James Ward-Prowse, and is it Alvarez they've signed as well?
Yeah.
They've signed some good players to, strengthen that squad. Jared Bowen's he's on a good run. Antonio, as we know, is a nuisance, and he can, he might not score for 3 weeks, but then 1 week he'll go on a run and score 6 or 7 in a few. So, it is tough, but I probably think I'm gonna go with Brighton as 6th, and then Newcastle 7th. But it'll be but then difficult because I don't know who's going to finish 7th or 8th between Newcastle and West Ham. So it's tough. It is very difficult. I could be wrong, and Newcastle, like you said, after the international break, go on a great run, and I hope they do because I think they've got a good squad. But I think we had this conversation last week, and looking at their options coming off the bench, against Liverpool, where they were a man advantage, and they should have took it to them a bit more. Will that play a part, especially now they've got that Champions League group as well? So
yeah, I think maybe that's. But I think that's kind of the same problem with West Ham as well. Like in terms of that, if they do lose some of those key players, if Ward-Prowse does get an injury, if Bowen maybe gets an injury, if Alvarez gets injured, if Zuma gets injured, there is a bit of a drop off to a bit similar to Newcastle. There's a drop off to the players that come in to replace them, like Luke.
Yeah.
So Luke, I come to you. Like obviously, I said that I thought Newcastle had finished 6th. Maybe that's me putting them into a vote for 7th. Gurj is unsure. What's your kind of take on that Newcastle v West Ham debate?
I agree. I think they are similar, and I'd say Newcastle probably on paper are the better side, and I think they will come out on top. To be honest, I think we're being a bit harsh based on what we've seen, because what we've seen is them come up against some of the best sides in the Premier League so far in the few games that we've had. So I think they will come out of the international break and be strong. Yes, there's the worry about injuries, and like you said, that Champions League group, you can't rotate for that if you want to have any dignity at the very least. So there is likely to be some squad players having to be introduced, and that's why I think Brighton are probably best suited, because I don't think the drop off between those players is that huge. But I think Newcastle's drop off is slightly less than West Ham, even though they have reinvested well. They've bought a new midfield to replace one player basically. But I still think going forward, their options aren't unbelievable. It's just as a number 9, really. Even Antonio's not the best of striker, but if he goes, Danny Ings has not looked like a good striker for a couple of seasons now. I just think that could kill them off, really.
Yeah, no, I'd concur with that. So we say Newcastle for 7th then?
Yeah.
Okay. Right. Newcastle into 7th. Right. So what I want to do now is, because I feel like we could be here chewing the fat with these two sections, higher mid and lower mid, for a while. We'll jump straight down to relegation, because if we sort those three out, then these next two kind of are easier to sort between, aren't they? Okay. So I feel like we're not going to be controversial. We've always said we don't want to be controversial on this show. Everybody seems to be tipping Luton and Sheffield United for relegation, not necessarily in any order. Would we say that we are three people that agree with that sentiment?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I don't know. Sheffield United, I think, would be surprising. I think Sheffield United either be 17th or 18th. In my opinion, they'll either escape or they'll go down. But I'll agree, because I'm not sure. I can't back it enough, so I'll agree.
It's kind of a feeling. It's not a certainty, is it? It's kind of
exactly.
It's like like Forest last year when they signed all those players, and everyone was like, "This is either going to go tits up or they're going to scrape survival." Nobody thought they were going to fly up the table, and they didn't. Everyone was like, "They're either going to go down. It's going to be a calamity, like it was for the first half of the season, or they were going to just about scrape survival," which they did in the end. So, yeah, I mean, it's harsh to say, because I like both clubs. I think they're both. I'd love to see both of them stay up, to be fair, particularly Luton. But unfortunately, I think Luton have done really well to recruit for next season. I think Luton would have a brilliant squad in the Championship next season. I think Sheffield United would also have a brilliant squad in the Championship next season. I just think with Sheffield United, how can you sell your best player at the time in Iliman Ndiaye and not? I mean, they ended up signing Archer, but there's no guarantee with that. Whereas Ndiaye, you knew what you were kind of going to get with him. Luke, obviously, as more of a avid watcher of the Championship than me and Gurj for the last few years, how good was Iliman Ndiaye, and how much of a loss will he be for them?
Yeah, I mean, he's just a level of. He's the difference between them getting promoted automatically and not last season. It's just one of those players that the sides that get promoted, he was one of the star man. And Sheffield United were a team that didn't really impress me for a side that came second in the Championship last season, but he is the man that can win games on his own. And to be fair, Cameron Archer is, for the money and for the options that they had on the table, is not a bad replacement. And I'd be surprised if they go down and he hasn't had a good enough season to stay in the Premier League with somebody else. Their squad to me is still probably it's no better than it was last season. So if you're going into the Premier League in that situation, and it's not like they'd run away with the Championship, then you're going to struggle. And I think the performance of the weekend kind of made me think maybe I'm wrong here. But then if we're talking about the last two clubs who I'm thinking might be in the relegation, one will scrape it. Everton are just equally big trouble as Sheffield United. So I don't think you can take too much from that performance.
Yeah, I think that's the sort of game for Sheffield United. If when they go 2-1 up, if you want to stay up, you have to hold on to that victory. You have to hold on to those 3 points. Throwing away 2 points like that, even at this stage of the season, like those 2 points. I mean, if I bring it back to Leicester, like you look back at the season as a whole, we dropped 2 points on the opening day of the season. We're 2-0 up against Brentford. Those 2 points would have kept us up. Like we would have been level with Everton. We had a better goal difference. They'd have gone down. It is, even at this stage of the season, so important to get as many points on the board as you can. If Sheffield United were serious about staying up, they had to hold on to the win there, and they didn't. But I think Everton is definitely a shout for somebody to go down. Luke, that's a fair point. I think. Gurj, is there anybody else that comes to mind? Like there's a few teams maybe that will be there or thereabouts, but Everton, there's only so many times you can sink below the surface before you actually drown, isn't there? Like there's only they've been playing with fire for far too long, haven't they?
Yeah, no, definitely. I said at the start of the season, just passing comments and stuff, I think Everton will go down, and my reasons are a bit cynical because I just think it'll be funny because they've invested so much in the stadium, and if they went down, it would just be banter, wouldn't it? Really, it'd be great. But no, in seriousness, they've been very lucky the past few seasons to stay up, and it's been because of individual performances, mainly probably Pickford, who's kept them in games. I think. So yeah, I think it's between them or Burnley that go down. I know Burnley's run of games haven't been amazing, but I haven't been too convinced by them yet. Could be proven wrong. Saying this now, we have them after the international break, and it's got 1-0 Burnley written all over it. But yeah, like I think it's between Everton and Burnley, and like Luke said, I think they're very, very similar to Sheffield United, and I think this is the year they go down. I do. And I think Burnley will probably just scrape 17th.
Yeah, I'd agree with you. Luke, in agreement?
Yeah, I mean, at the start of the season, I didn't have them there, and I think Wolves are another one that are in danger as well potentially. But I just thought after pre-season, a full season with Sean Dyche, they would be fine. But this the start of the season, they've had winnable games and not done anything about it. It's just they're just poor all over the pitch.
Yeah, I think that Wolves one was another one, like the Sheffield United Everton game. It's one where Wolves will look back on it at the end of the season. They'll say, we won that game. And it might be the difference between them staying up and going down because they beat a direct rival everyone's tipping at the moment. I think both teams have got... You could argue for both that they might stay up, but I think out of the two of them, it's easier to argue that Everton go down.
Yeah.
Right, so Everton make up the bottom three. Right, what I'm going to do now is because there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 teams left, right? And they're all going to go in sort of higher mid and lower mid. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put these teams, I'm just going to place them into either the higher mid or the lower mid. And I feel like we'll probably be in agreement on most of them. But if there are any glaring changes, because this is in no particular order, this is from 8th to 12th and then 13th to 17th. I want you to tell me if there's any I should swap around, okay? So I'm just going to drop these in any particular order, and then I want you to tell me if there's any I should swap around, okay? And like I say, if I'm putting them in order, this is not because I think they are going to finish in this position. It's purely just because this is where I think they will be this season. Right. That's what I'm going to get. That's what I'm thinking. Okay. I was eyeing those up earlier. That's what I'm thinking. I think that from 8th to 12th, in no particular order, in that sort of higher mid-table position, I think you'll have Villa, Brentford, Forest, Chelsea, and West Ham. Whereas in the lower mid-table section, sort of mostly like bottom half, some of these teams may be sniffing around relegation. We've got Burnley, Bournemouth, Wolves, Palace, and Fulham. Not all of those teams sniffing around relegation, but I just think maybe teams like Burnley, Bournemouth have recruited well, but they spent a lot of money, so maybe there's pressure. Wolves, Palace-ish. I think those teams will maybe be in and around the bottom three for a while. Some of them will pull away, some of them won't. That's where my head's at. Are there any sort of ones that really stand out and you go, no, Jack, you've got that really wrong?
No, I think
you can tell me, you can shout at me and tell me I'm wrong.
No, no, I think you're right. You could not guess the order they'd finish, but I think that's definitely where it is. I think that higher mid section is so tight that that could finish in any order, but I think it will be between those 5 teams. Same with the low. I know, like you mentioned, I think 3 of them will be more comfortable than the others. But I think Wolves, Burnley will be definitely sniffing that relegation battle. It'll be between 5 teams, I think. But yeah, I would agree.
Yeah, Luke?
I think, I mean, and maybe it's just me being a bit optimistic as a QPR fan. I'd like to see Brentford in the lower section of that. But I don't, there's nothing to prove that so far, but I'm always just assuming that at some point they've just got to drop off. And Forest as well. I think Forest and Palace is a pretty close one, and it'll probably be the likes of 12th or 13th for those two. But I think Palace have started the season really well, and they've had a couple of tough fixtures too. And they've got players to come back. I think they've got a solid squad and a solid manager, so it kind of just reeks of a 12th place finish for Palace for me. And then Bournemouth was one I was optimistic about at the start of the season, and I'm not so optimistic now, but kind of hoping that they'll come good to prove my prediction right in the end. But maybe Palace or Forest is probably the only one I can be realistic on.
Yeah, I think Forest is an interesting one because this really pains me to say this, similar with you and Brentford, Luke, is that they have looked really strong so far this season. I actually think their deadline day was really good. Like they brought in Sangare, not necessarily just on deadline day, but in the later part of the window, they had Hudson-Odoi, Ilanga, Sangare, the guy from Norwich whose name I can't pronounce. Yeah, well, however you pronounce his name, but he's a really good young centre half. I think building on what they sort of established last season, it's good. Like players like Anthony Ilanga, for example, you can be Forest's best player or one of the best players at Forest and not be good enough for a top 6 team quite easily. So I think he's really good recruitment. Hudson-Odoi is a player that, 2 or 3 years ago we were talking about was a 50, 60 million pound potential player to Bayern Munich. Like there's a player in there. And also, weirdly enough, in that higher midsection, 3 of those teams, you could easily talk about maybe even finishing as high as 5th. So that sort of gap from 5th down to 17th, that could move around in any order. We could get all of this wrong, to be fair. But that is the beauty. Are there any that we would swap over at all, or are we okay with that? Speak now or forever hold your peace.
I'll just come back to United when we finish top 4.
You still might. We said it was a toss-up. We went democratic instead. Right. So what we've got is we think as a collective, we think that Man City will win the league again. Be like the Bundesliga now. Top 4 we got in no particular order. These aren't, but Arsenal, Liverpool, Spurs, Europa League, United and Brighton, Conference League, Newcastle. Higher mid-table, so from 8th to 12th, in no particular order, Villa, Brentford, Forest, Chelsea, West Ham. Lower mid-table, again, no particular order, Burnley, Bournemouth, Wolves, Palace, Fulham, and then we reckon that Sheffield United, Luton, and Everton will sink down to the Championship. Do you know what? I don't know how I'd feel about if the Premier League table finished that way. I'd be probably sad to see City win it again, but after the fact that we went down in their place, even though they're absolute garbage, I'd love to see Everton go down and swap places with them personally. But we'll see. We'll see how it plays out. So, Luke, seeing as we finished the tier list now, we'll let you head off because you've obviously got to go and record your own show. So please enjoy that. Don't miss us too much. Is there anything particular that you're talking about tonight? Anything to plug?
I think we've got a tier list as well, but we are ranking every Premier League's transfer business. So similar to what we did on the Championship the other day, but we'll do a Premier League. So yeah, if anybody's listening, it'll probably be out at similar time to this one. So if you want to listen, go for it. Thank you very much.
We have got just one thing before Luke goes. Sorry, I haven't actually told him because I only sorted it out today. We have a special guest on our show on Thursday. We are obviously called Forza 92, and all we've talked about so far really is Premier League, European football, and Championship. We do have somebody who I've had on my show a long time ago, really nice guy from a podcast or from a blog called Gandemonium. So I've got a guy from Sutton United who's going to come on and talk with us only for a short while on Thursday. So please make sure you check that out once we release that after Thursday. And also go back and check out our transfer window rating that we did last week, me and Luke, about the Championship transfer window. And then everything went to shit because that was on deadline day and it was a terrible idea because then loads of players moved afterwards. So we'll have to do that again at some point. But yeah, Luke, thanks a lot, mate. And I'll catch you on Thursday.
Thank you very much. And enjoy the rest of the podcast.
See you later, mate.
So, Gurj, then there were 2. I'm going to just stop sharing the tier list screen now. It's just the 2 of us. Ewan still not probably joining us, so it will just be us 2. 2 things we really want to talk to. Try that again. 2 things I really wanted to talk about, and one of them was obviously this article, this interview that Jordan Henderson's done, but also United v Arsenal, because I think that was like game of the weekend. It was because it had kind of everything. It was like we talked about last week with the Liverpool Newcastle game. It was proper Barclays again, wasn't it? Really?
It was.
Even though you were on the negative end of it, I suppose. But
yeah, it was a tough one to take, because I don't think 3-1 was a fair reflection of the game at all. I think if it finished a draw or if it finished either team winning 2-1, I would have been, fair enough. Because I thought Arsenal definitely played a better football. I won't take that away from them, but I think we went with the game plan. We knew what we were going to do. We knew the counter was going to be our best friend, like it usually is. It was almost like transitional United of old, and it was good to see. But yeah, it was there's so much that happened in that game. It was proper prime Barclays. It was just a bit sad that I was one of the people involved in it because it was stressful to watch, to say the least.
Yeah, no, to be fair, I was kind of, the weird one for me was the Garnacho goal, like, which in my opinion is those offsides are so harsh because yes, letter of the law, he has slightly gone early, but he really hasn't gained much of an advantage there because it's such fine margins. It's not like he's like a whole, like if half of his body was offside, maybe you could argue it, but there's barely an advantage there at all. And also because Gabriel's made that step to try and hold him offside, he's stepping the wrong way anyway. Even if he's onside, he's not catching him because he's stepping the wrong way. Like it's those ones always irk me because anyone who's actually played the game knows that makes no difference whatsoever.
No, absolutely. And I think so. I've obviously had a bit of an opinion on VAR last week, but it's the same again. It's more the angle that they showed it offside. It does look marginally offside, like ever so marginally. But then if you actually look at the angle where the linesman would have looked at it, he was in line. Like there's so many angles that have come out now, and if you look at it straight down the line, he's probably onside. So it like fair. Like I had this conversation where it's like with VAR, I'm not with offside. It's you're either off or you're not. So it's a bit pointless in terms of arguing the decision because the lines are drawn and he's either offside or he's not. But I think you need to, when you're doing it. I think it was the World Cup they had the 3D modeling.
Yeah, and they do it in the Champions League as well. I'm sure they have it in the Champions League as well, don't they?
It's a UEFA FIFA thing. I'm pretty certain, but
surely it just seems to work so much more fluidly, doesn't it?
100%. I think that's maybe something that should be implemented for us in off of VAR in the domestic leagues, because realistically, if you look at it, to me, I'm obviously going to argue the fact that it wasn't offside and that he's actually in line. And I think Gabriel was Gabriel, wasn't it? Yeah, it was.
Yeah,
Gabriel was a very, very lucky boy for 3 instances in that last 25 minutes of the game. Because like you said, Garnacho's not gaining any advantage by his Michael Jackson impression, because if anything, he's stopping and then he's through. So he's just very lucky to get away with that. And
yeah, but some would argue because it worked out in the end. Some would argue good defending, wouldn't they?
Yeah, absolutely. If that was Varane, Martin, even Maguire, or one of our centre backs doing it, I would have think, yeah, brilliant. I'm not going to take that away from him because it is smart. It is probably because he knows in a foot race, very few people will catch Garnacho.
Yeah,
very few people will catch him, and it was one of those where if it worked out for him like it did, you'd say great defending. But if it didn't work out, he's going to get absolutely scrutinised for it. But even then, even if he does continue his running, he's not catching him. He's about maybe like 6, 7, 8, 9 yards away from him. So you're telling me he has to then cut that? It's
and he takes the finish really quickly as well, doesn't he? He's
100%. He's clinical.
Yeah,
so that irked me a lot. That decision.
Yeah. But then it's fairly consistent with how VAR's been implemented in the Premier League again, isn't it? But then again, we can't. The flip side to that though is that you can't really argue with it too much when they overturned a penalty in your favour, which in some ways was not quite the same, but was similar to the Rashford one last week in how there was minimal contact. And like we said, to show it in slow motion, yes, it was minimal contact, but when you're moving at speed, it can sort of knock you over. I think there was less of a case for this one, which is probably why it was overturned. Yeah. But again, VAR kind of in the centre of the attention once more. Do you think that one was the right decision in the end? Or because I think maybe on another day, another referee might just say, well, there was still contact, so it's a penalty.
It's that one. The thing I'll just mention the Rashford one very quickly. I think they're very different because the Rashford one, he's come across and he's hitting he's actually made more firm contact, which has caused him to knock into his knee and go over. Which at the speed Rashford goes, foul, penalty, fine. I think the Havertz one, when it was given, I immediately said fair enough. Like I didn't have any complaints, but then looking at it in slow motion, I was a bit like, "Oh, actually, are you sure?"
Yeah,
bit of bias, being the United fan. But my friend, who's actually a City fan, who I was watching it with, said the same thing. He said he wasn't because Wan-Bissaka stops, Casemiro stops, and it's like the faintest touch, but it's almost like Havertz was looking for it because he trailed his leg out a bit. So it's one of those where if it's given and they've stuck with the decision, I would complain, but have no complaints at the same time. Obviously, being a United fan.
Yeah, it's the tribalism, isn't it, that would come from
Yeah,
really.
But realistically, if it was given, I couldn't be annoyed at it.
Yeah.
So at the time, buzzing that was overturned. But if it was given, fair enough. I couldn't have that many complaints. But yeah, it obviously didn't count for much in the end because then you go up the other end and Højlund, who may add looked very good and very promising when he came on. So, and I did say we've got a player in him now, and I'm excited to see how he performs going forward. He essentially gets wrestled to the ground.
Yes, I find that one interesting because I thought initially, in the moment, I thought it's a penalty. I thought straight away like that was a penalty. But then when I watched it back, I was like, I don't know if it is or not. And I just think it ended up being a bit of a tussle. I don't know if Gabriel really did enough to foul him because it was just sort of his arm across. Again, it's another one of those that on another day is given. I just think in that high pressure situation, because I think with that one, it was a case of if he gives it, he definitely can't overturn it because you can't say there's not enough contact. You can't. I think with that one, he maybe had to go, I don't know, like just a footballing incident almost, if we want to compare it to like F1 where they say, oh, it's just a coming together. Because I think Gabriel tries to sort of get across him. He doesn't grab his shirt. He doesn't hold him with two arms or anything. It's one arm. And I think he just sort of loses his balance. But like on another day, I think it does get given as a penalty because like you said, initial reaction for me was that's a penalty. Watched it back and I was about like, I don't know actually.
I think with that one, because it wasn't even looked at, like they didn't even look at it and they kind of dismissed it straight away. So I was a bit like that again, it's the consistency of it all, because if that was then given as a decision penalty and then it was looked at and then whatever, at least you've got a bit of a consistent, firm answer. But it's the fact they didn't look at it. And I think, again, there's a bit of biasy because obviously we're chasing the game and rightly or wrongly, we were disallowed a goal. And I think it just looks worse because Højlund's trying to get a shot off, but then, Gabriel's kind of come across him and holding him back, and then the other defender gets to clear it away. But yeah, there seems to be a common theme, especially when we play, about refereeing decisions and VAR decisions, and it then goes to the Rice goal where there's a case that Evans was impeded. I'm not going to say that Evans is going to get out there in time and block the shot, but it definitely reduces the chances of Rice scoring.
Yeah. So I think that one with Johnny Evans, I think with that one, I think he was far too interested in grappling with his man. I think if he'd have tried, because it was happening when the ball was coming in, I think if he'd have been more focused on where the ball was, and not moaning to the referee and not trying to buy a foul, he might have made a difference. Because actually, I think the problem was because he was too busy trying to buy the foul and he was grappling with the man as well.
Yeah. If
he'd have just tried to play the ball, the ref probably would have been drawn to it and been like, okay, he definitely has been impeded there because he's trying to get out to the ball. But instead, he's appealing, he's grappling with him as well. Like that was 6 of one, half a dozen of the other, I think, in the end. And you see that from the fact that it's the Arsenal player that ends up on the deck, doesn't it? Like, because he sort of pulls him down. I think that makes the referee go, okay, well, they're both at it. Like, and then I've seen a lot of people sort of say that Onana could have done better for the goal, but I actually think it comes at him really quick. It's deflected.
Yeah,
if he makes that save, it's one hell of a save. So him letting it in, I don't think is a problem.
No,
I don't think. I think it's fair to say that a draw probably would have been a fair result in the end.
Yeah.
I don't think either team really deserved to win, but I think what Arsenal showed is their, for want of a better word, their championship pedigree. I think that's the sort of thing that top sides do, isn't it? Is they maybe don't play at their best, but they still come out of it looking like comfortable winners, really.
Yeah.
And I think that's why, for me, I kind of think Arsenal have got a chance to win in the league, because that's a game last season that they probably wouldn't have. I'm not saying that they lost, but they probably wouldn't have won it. So, yeah, interesting one. We did want to talk about the Jordan Henderson situation, because I don't know if you've seen the stuff that's come out from the article. What you'd respect football players so much if they just told the truth sometimes. Like, everyone knows that most of the players that are going to Saudi Arabia are going there for the money.
Yeah.
And I'd respect, like, Kalidou Koulibaly even came out and said it, didn't he? He was like, I'm setting my family up. I'm going to earn so much money that I'm building. He said, like, he's building schools. He's got enough money to build schools in his villages at home back in, is he from Senegal or Cameroon? I can't remember. Is he Senegal?
I think he's Senegal, yeah.
Yeah, but he said, like, he's building villages and like wells and schools and things back home. Like, and he's like, I've got the money to do it, so I can do it. At least he's honest, and he's doing it for a good cause, granted. But he's said, I'm doing it for the money. 100%. But Jordan Henderson's come out and been like, oh, well, I'm not doing it for the money. Money had nothing to do with it. And you're like, Jordan, you're from.
Let's be honest, yeah.
You're from Sunderland, mate. You didn't dream of going to play in Saudi Arabia with Steven Gerrard, did you? Let's be fair.
100%. I think the interview. So I didn't watch it or anything, but I've seen articles on it. I've spoken to Liverpool fans who are colleagues and friends of mine, and they're all a bit like he's made himself look like a bit of an idiot here, because the main, I think, do you know when he originally signed, one of the main things was about his LGBTQ alliances, being a big advocate for it and supporting it. And, in Saudi Arabia, that's, for a better word, it's not something that's practiced. It's so that was the first thing, and his answer on that wasn't great in the interview. Saying that he wants to.
Do you know one thing that always hates me is that lots of things hate me, I'm sure. One thing that always like really grates on me. When people say, rather than apologizing, they don't say I'm sorry. They always add that little bit on the end, which is I'm sorry you feel that way.
Yeah,
because that's not an apology for your actions. That's you like saying I'm sorry that you don't like what I've done. But if you've made yourself a figurehead in football, which is something that is so subconsciously anti-LGBTQ plus, and that's not to say that everybody in football or every fan, every manager, every coach or anything is anti-LGBTQ plus, but there is a reason there are no elite level footballers who are gay. And the only one who's ever come out who was what I would class as an elite level footballer was, obviously, you had Fashnu in the 90s, and then obviously Thomas Hitzelsberger obviously came out as well. But Hitzelsberger didn't do it till after he retired, so he was kind of out of the spotlight a little bit. No other players have been. There's so many players around the world. There's thousands of players. You're telling me that not a single one of them is bisexual or homosexual? Like, you're telling me that's it's ridiculous. It's just not.
100%. Yeah,
it's just not true. And when you've made yourself the figurehead in English football for that, to stand up for that group, and then you've gone to a country where it's literally illegal to, like, as you say, the word would be practiced. It's illegal to be who you are. Is just. Yeah, it doesn't sit right with me at all, I think. And I said it in a tweet as well, like the argument of he's making generational wealth. Shut up. Like, I'm not being funny. If, like, for somebody who doesn't earn £100,000 a week plus, if you've been on £100,000 a week plus for how long has he been at Liverpool now? Like
at 9 least years, 8 years.
Yeah, if you're earning, like, let's say when he first joined, he was probably on 50, 60, and it's gone up to, if you're earning that kind of money for nearly a decade and you've not got generational wealth, what have you been doing with your money? Yeah, you shouldn't have to go to Saudi Arabia with that. And it really pains me. I hate it, because I had so much respect for Jordan Henderson. Like, he was a player from like it's hard, particularly when you as a United fan for a Liverpool player to say you have respect for a Liverpool player and you admire some of the work that they do.
Mm-hmm.
He's burnt a lot of those bridges, hasn't he?
Yeah, 100%. And I think, Ewan would probably say the same, as, Ewan's obviously a big Newcastle fan. Henderson played for Sunderland. He would probably say the same thing. You lose a lot of respect for people like that. Like, take away his allegiances for football and stuff like that. And you just, look at him as, morals as a man or as a person. And, being such a big advocate for such an important cause, and then almost turn your back on it because he's going to get paid multiple hundreds of thousands of pounds because he's afraid of, well, he said he wouldn't rule out wearing rainbow laces, but at the same time, he doesn't want to disrespect the religion and culture. Then he's almost copped out and saying, if we're going to try and be all inclusive, then I'm going to have to do that sort of thing in Saudi Arabia and not disrespect them. Like, yeah, like he's and it's just going. I know he words it in a way where he's not going against his values, but I'm not being funny. You are. You're going against your values by not standing up for what you believe in. Like, imagine, and this is getting really like historical and political, but imagine if Martin Luther King, who stood up for so many African Americans in America, then suddenly went, actually, what, lads, got a paycheck here, I'm just gonna sack that off.
Yeah.
Do you know it doesn't make sense, and that interview as a whole is a bit of a car crash because he played Liverpool where he spent loads of time, and he's saying that they didn't want me when that's definitely not the case.
Well, he was club captain, wasn't he?
He was club captain, and there was multiple articles saying, there's multiple articles from Liverpool affiliates saying they wanted Henderson to stay. They wanted him to be a part of the squad. Fair enough, he wouldn't get his 90 minutes every week, but he was obviously a key part of that change room, and he almost burnt his bridges there, saying they didn't want me. And yeah, that whole thing is a bit of a car crash, that interview. And like you said earlier, is like, just admit you're there for the money. Like, or if you genuinely were invested in the project, if you genuinely were saying, you know what, I've played with Steven Gerrard for X amount of years, I have a great belief in what he's doing, and I think that project's going to be really successful. And you know what, I'm going to help my mate out a bit here by being that spearhead for him. I would then be like, fair enough. That kind of makes more sense. But it's not that. He's gone against what he believes in. He's not admitting the reasons why. And I think it's more of a case of, I think you would feel the same if he was just honest and said, you know what, I'm getting a chance here to make millions and millions of pounds, sort out family, friends, and whatever. All right, okay, crack on, mate. Good on you for getting that move. But I think the big thing is and it irks a lot of people, is he's gone against his morals.
Yeah, and I think he's betrayed a lot of people in what he's done. I think that's where the problems lie, isn't it? And I think that's I just think it was ill-advised. I think he shouldn't have done the interview because unless you're going to tell the truth, then it's a pointless conversation to have. Yeah, exactly. But what we will do is we will end the episode because we've managed to be really concise with our timings tonight, and this is why I blame Ewan, because he's not here, and we've managed to keep it to hopefully under an hour, provided that this week's game of Obscure Footballer of the Week doesn't last longer than 6 minutes, because Gurj is going to be the first person this year to actually win one of these games. Right. So we'll start us off. Are you ready for your debut on Obscure Footballer of the Week?
Absolutely not, but let's crack on.
Okay. So all of these players that we do on Obscure Footballer of the Week, every single one has played in the Premier League. Okay. And they've not played like one game or two games. They've played quite a large number of games. So that's why they're obscure, because they're not like the best players, the really memorable ones. They're just ones who played a lot of games, but they may have slipped through the cracks of your memory. So I was born on the 3rd of August, 1984, making me 39 years old. I'm not going to tell you where they're from yet, because that maybe gives it away a little bit. Okay. I made my debut in 2001, and I retired in 2019, playing 421 games, scoring 39 goals.
Okay.
I moved to England in 2011, where I joined the club that I'm most well known for playing for. Any guesses?
Makes him 39.
I'll give you a next clue because this might narrow it down a little bit. I won the Asian Cup in 2015 and was a runner-up in 2011.
Is it not Park? Is it?
No, it's not Park. No, a little bit later. He's a bit earlier.
Bit earlier, right? Okay.
I'll give you some honours. Honours often helps. Where are we? I accidentally opened career statistics. Right, so I won. This will give you a clue. The A-League Premiership in 07-08.
Right.
I was a Championship playoff winner in 2013.
Okay.
FA Cup runner-up in 2015-16. Think about who they may have lost to in that final. And I also won the AFC Asian Cup in 2015. I've already said that one.
Mm-hmm.
So think about who may have won the FA Cup in 2015-16.
I'm sure that was you, wasn't it? Definitely was Leicester.
No, that was the Premier League. That was the Premier League, not the FA Cup. Well, somebody and their manager may have got sacked controversially after winning it.
Oh. Sounds like Chelsea all over that.
It does, but it's not Chelsea. A certain someone scored the winner.
Oh, Palace. So So Palace Asian.
So most famously known for playing for Palace.
Yeah.
Made his debut in 2001 for Sydney United.
Oh Christ. Is it not? Can't be Joel Ward or someone like that, is it?
No, he's English.
No, he's English. Who am I thinking of that sounds like Joel Ward?
He's currently, didn't know this, assistant coach at Spurs.
Is he? Oh God, I don't know that.
But he's most commonly known for played for Palace, and then he went to Villa as well afterwards. But before that, played for several clubs in Australia and a couple of clubs in Turkey as well.
Oh, this is difficult. Palace.
And his first name, he's not known. He's known by a nickname. He's and then surname. His first names are Michael John and then surname, but he's known by something else.
He's known by Jason.
No.
Jason Punching came into mind for some reason. I don't know why. Michael John. Oh, it's not. No. I honestly don't know. I can't think, mate. Honestly,
throw out some Palace players. See if it sticks. Throw out some random Palace players.
Well, I can't. My limit goes from Wilfried Zaha to Joe Ward to Punching to. I'm trying to think they're centre mids. It screams centre mid.
He was a centre mid, to be fair. Defensive midfielder.
Yeah, he screams
big lad, physical enforcer.
Oh my God. Nah, how does he can't think? I genuinely can't think.
You give up?
Yeah, man.
Oh, it's Mila Jedinak.
Nah, I would never have got that, you know. If you said looks a bit Turkish, big black beard, maybe I would have got
it. To be fair, he is of Croatian descendancy, I think, because Mila is a Croatian pronunciation.
Yeah.
But I did not know his full name was Michael John Jedinak.
I did not know that either, because that's rogue.
Yeah, but Mila Jedinak.
Spurs.
Yeah, I didn't either, but I guess he probably worked with Postecoglou, I suppose.
Was he at Celtic with Postecoglou?
I don't think so. I don't know. Let me see if there's anything on his coaching career. Yeah. So he was appointed coaching role at Aston Villa's academy. He was then appointed loan development coach at Aston Villa, and then I assume that's what he's done until Postecoglou appointed him, because Postecoglou appointed him this year with him.
Oh, okay. No, that was very obscure. I would not have, because when you originally said obscure, I was starting thinking like Ivan Campos and like.
Yeah, to be fair, I've always wanted to say Campos, but I feel like he'd be one that people get fairly quickly. So
Two guy and like Morton Camps, Pedersen, all them like Blackburn and Bolton era ones.
we've had some absolute stinkers. Like I managed to get one that Ewan gave me, which I really struggled with, which was Habib Bey. I couldn't believe some of them have been awful, but like I feel like I need to go. We need to get everyone on one, because if I do one when everyone's on, you can maybe feed off each other and like give each other clues and stuff. I don't know, but
yeah.
Oh, we'll see. Right, Gurj, we'll finish there with another disappointing game show moment. So someone will win one of these eventually, listeners, I promise. But yeah, thanks for joining us again, Gurj. Enjoy your holiday. Don't get lost too much in Rome. Don't burn. I don't know.
Try not to, mate.
Yeah, don't ruin any like old monuments or anything like that. Have a great time, and I'll catch you next week.
Catch you next week. Thanks, mate.
Cheers, bud.